We got a really interesting story today that we're going to be going into detail about the heist that Tommy DeSimone had turned down from you, and it's a pretty long one, extensive. So,
Yeah.
anybody listening, just kind of hold your questions till the end, and we'll get to them because Sal might answer it along the way while he goes into detail. There's a lot of detail to the story, so
It's kind of interesting because I thought about this, and it's 50 years ago next week
damn,
that we talked about this robbery.
that's a long time ago.
Yeah, but I clearly remember um, how I got the information. In the beginning, 4 years earlier, 1969, Cataldo, Donnelly, and Funzy Terracone, they somehow got information about a truck and they hijacked it, and it was loaded with watches. And the interesting thing about that was they had the watches put away like in a little warehouse. And one day after they did the heist, our attorney got a hold of Cataldo and Donnelly and Terracone and said, "Hey, look, somebody saw the car you were using on the heist. I don't know, it might have been Funzy's car, and we're going to arrest Funzy." Oh, they got paranoid. Funzy was still on parole from the 1960s. He was in federal prison. And so they got nervous. And then Taldo said to the attorney, "Well, what can we do?" He says, "Look, I got this corrupt detective. I'm going to go meet with him." So when he came back, he said, "Look, if you give the watches back, nobody will get arrested. You got to give it all back because the insurance company, knows it's a lot of money. In those days, it might have been like, I don't know, $250,000. That's 50 years ago. It was a lot."
That's a lot.
So they made an agreement to load it up in the truck and give it back. Well, what Cataldo, Donnelly, and Funzy did, they sifted through the watches and took out a whole load of good ones. Then they went to return the truck. And I remember them telling me it was right near the Queens Criminal Courthouse. And they dropped the truck off there with the key inside, left it there, and they backed away. And they was sniping on the cops. When the detectives pulled up, they had a little truck, and they started taking cases out of the truck that Cataldo and Donnelly and Terracone gave over to them. So they both stole some of the watches before they went back to the insurance company. But nothing ever came out of it. Nobody was arrested, and that was the story in 1969. They didn't tell me all of that until years later, but it was Christmas of '73, and we were at a party at a place I was hanging out, this Club 93. Incidentally, the bartender was Angela, her name was.
Oh, Tommy's
Angela
girl.
was married to Tommy DeSimone. She was the bartender there. And it was a drunken guy that was there, and I used to talk to him. He was the driver for this particular company, S&H Pomerantz. And in his drunken stupor, he gave me all the details about the watches were in that building. So that was like around Christmas time. So then a week or 3 weeks later, I said to Foxy, "Let's go look at this building." So we went over to the airport. We found the building. It was all fenced in. It had a security, gate and everything, a guard there. And I said, "I bet you we can heist the building." So then I told Tommy about it. And Tommy was doing a lot of coke at that point. And we took him to show him, but we had to get over there early in the morning every morning. We had to watch the people go in. Then we had to be there on Tuesday to watch the customs inspectors to come. They had to go through all the watches that came from Switzerland and approve them and put custom stickers on all the cases. So Tommy didn't want to get up. He was doing a lot of cocaine. He didn't want to get up in the morning. So after about a week or two, I said, "Look, you're not going to come. Forget it. It's a long shot that we'll even do this robbery. And it's easy to get busted in the airport." He said, "I don't want to be part of it." So then Foxy and I continued. And then Foxy said, "I'm going to ask Gene Gotti if he wants to go with us to do this." So he went back and he told Gene Gotti, and Gene met with John. And as far as I heard, Foxy said, "John says, that guy Ubats, he's nuts. He's going to get you guys killed in the airport." So Gene Gotti decided not to go. And we still needed 2 more guys. And I said, "Let's ask Funzy if he wants to do this heist, And by that time, we had been watching every week for like 3 or 4 weeks. And we asked him, we told him that we were clocking all the activity into this building. So he said, okay, but I can't go up front. I can't let them see my face. That's okay. We're going to get a truck. We'll hide you inside the truck. Once we get past the gate, we'll go in. We'll make the move. We'll stick up everybody. We'll tape everybody up, put them in an office so they can't see. We'll put ski mask on everybody, and they won't be able to see you. He said, that's okay, but we still need another guy. So with that, Foxy went back and talked to John, and Gotti said, listen, I know this guy. He's a little older than me. He's a real tough guy. He's a hitman from Harlem. His name is Charlie. You guys should take Charlie, ask him. So then we met with Charlie and we showed him where we were going to do the score, right inside, JFK cargo area. He was all excited about it because I said, there's got to be a couple of $1 million worth of watches in there. So for 2 or 3 more weeks, we watched every Tuesday and we clocked the employees going in. There was 4 people. There was 2 women and 2 men. And then at 10 o'clock in the morning, U.S. Customs would come there. They'd knock 3 times on the door, we noticed, and they would open the door, let the 2 customs inspectors in. I figured that they were going to inspect all the watches that had to be shipped out of JFK to New York City. And it all looked like we could do this, Our problem was that there was a gas shortage in February. So there was a pro and a con. The price of gold had gone up to $120 in 3 or 4 months. And now, because in 69, it was $35 an ounce when Cataldo did the heist. Now that we see it's $128 an ounce, I'm figuring, wow, we're going to get a bunch of money for the watches if they're gold. By the time we're ready to do the heist, it's up to over 140 an ounce, which is like amazing. I mean, it was, something that nobody had ever considered that gold was going to skyrocket. So we kept looking. About 2 weeks before we're going to do the heist, I said, look, we got to get a stolen truck. We got to get paperwork. So Foxy said, look, my cousin can get us some paperwork, like, to show the guard, like a pickup order. So we had everything arranged. We had all black clothes, gloves, ski mask. And then I kept looking. I said, did you notice early as we got there, the 2 employees met. Then a few minutes later, the other 2 employees came. I said, look at the size of those locks over there. They were big locks. They were like American locks, like hardened steel silver. And I said, they unlock the roll down door and they go in. I said, let's get 2 locks. And Fox said, what are we going to do with the 2 locks? Well, after we do the heist, we'll lock them in because about an hour later, Customs shows up and they'll probably be locked in, banging to get out. And Customs going to go, what's going on? They'll have to get somebody to come with a torch to cut the locks. And if we're going to go out to Long Island, because we made arrangements to use a funeral parlor way out in the Hamptons, Jackie Donnelly had a brother-in-law that had been a mortician, and he worked out there. And he said, look, you can come out there and use the funeral parlor, the basement, for like 1 or 2 days. So we're all ready to go. And then Tommy shows up. And I go, you missed the boat. We're doing this, man. He says, you got to be kidding. You guys are going to get killed. Okay. So this is 1974. This is 4 years before they did the Lufthansa heist, which is very similar, by the way. Go into the airport and stick up a cargo terminal, which is unheard of. Most guys wouldn't even think of doing it.
So he was upset that he had missed the boat then?
Well, he was and he wasn't, because he didn't know, how much was going to be involved or whatever. So finally the day came. We got up early. We got the truck. We got dressed. We put Charlie Scotti and Funzy Terracone in the back of the truck. And then we're wearing these here sort of hats with little ski masks because it's February and it's cold. And we made sure to fill up the truck with gas because there was a gas shortage and there were lines in New York City that month. So we drive in, we back up and we knock on the door and somebody opens the door. Foxy and I rush in there and we tie everybody up. We put ski masks over the top of them, turn the hats around, lay them down and tell everybody we're not going to hurt them. And Terracone, who's 6'6", he comes in, he's watching all the hostages that we had 4 of them on the floor in an office. Then we go to the back and we see this huge room, had to be like 20 by 30, 20 by 40, I don't know. And we see all these boxes and cases of watches. And from what I heard from Cataldo and Donnelly in the past, the ones that were most valuable, they were in big wooden cases because they had all the packing for the watches to come in, a little plastic box with literature and stuff.
Right.
So then we started loading them up on these 4-wheel hand trucks like you would get in Home Depot, and then rolling them out to the truck that's on the dock. We're doing this for 30, 40 minutes. And I said, we got less than an hour. We got to load this whole truck up. Well, after about 30 minutes, everybody was exhausted. So then Foxy went in and said, I'll watch these people for a few minutes. You go out and you load a few loads and get it out in the truck. Well, by the time the hour came, it was like maybe going on maybe 9 o'clock, and we knew the U.S. Customs was going to come around 9:30, 10. We were fully loaded, and we locked the doors on the inside. Then I put those 2 locks on the outside up on the roll-down gate, steel gate, figuring, well, Customs comes in, I'm not even going to be able to get in. I don't even know it's a robbery. And off we drove out to Long Island. So when we got to Long Island, we called the number, and the guy met us. We backed up the truck, and we slid everything down in the basement. And there was a few coffins down there. I don't know if there was bodies in the coffins, but it was a funeral home. And we lined up everything. And then Foxy had, I guess it was Charlie and Funzy drive the car and truck maybe 20 miles away and dump the truck. Well, we always had gloves on. We didn't have to wipe it down. We just left the truck, went back to the funeral parlor. And we spent all day lining up 4 different shares of all those watches. And I remember I counted them up. I was tabulating how many we had. We had over 14,000 watches each. So it was like 56,000 watches there. And we had spent hours, making a list of what we actually had. Then somebody went and got lunch. And then we were exhausted by 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night. And we're sitting there. And I don't know who said it. I think maybe Charlie said it. He goes, Ubas, what time is it? And I said, I don't know. I don't have a watch. And we were laughing, We have 58,000 watches in that funeral home,
58,000.
So the next part of this was the next day to get, everybody had to go rent a little small U-Haul like van to pick up each share of the watches. So everybody showed up. 4 of us out there, and Foxy and I, we shared the van. The other guys had their own little U-Haul vans, and we drove back, and everybody went off their own way. And then Foxy dropped me off, and I put my stuff in the garage. I had a rental garage, and then he took his. I don't know where he went. I don't know where Funzy went with his or what Charlie went with his. But all I know is that Foxy went and gave John Gotti the list, and it was only 1 or 2 days later, we get a call to meet Mike Corio, the attorney. So Foxy and I, we go meet him for coffee. He's, wow. He goes, we hadn't seen him. You guys just pulled off a big score. I go, how do you know that? He said, all I can tell you is that the same insurance company that Cataldo and Donnelly and Terracone dealt with like 4 years earlier, they got in touch with Queen's robbery squad and said that company was heisted again. Only this time, 4 guys went into the upper. We didn't know that Willie Boy Johnson was an informant that year. And what was happening was, from we heard later on, he would get information to the FBI, but they would never make a bust. They would just, because they didn't want to compromise him. So we had time to get rid of all these watches. So Foxy was the first one to bring John samples and a list. And then Charlie, I don't know what he did with his watches, and I don't know what Funzy did with his watches. But we did meet like a week or 2 later, and Charlie said, hey, I got about $70,000. And then Funzy said, I don't want to say what I got, but I got more than you. And then Foxy didn't feel too bad because he only got $60,000 from Charlie Fatico and John Gotti. But I'm holding the entire portion of the score, and I got it buried, and I got a list. And so when I make the list, I set aside $600 Rado watches, R-A-D-O, Rado, whatever it was. And half of them were gold and back in the day. And by the time I did look at the gold price, it had already gone over 148. So now it was so much higher than when Cataldo, Donnelly, and Cataldo did that robbery in 69. I had the list and I gave it to Cataldo. Well, the bottom line was Cataldo said he wasn't in communication with Gotti and didn't know what Gotti paid Foxy. Foxy told me that he got 60,000, which I knew if he got 60, it was worth 100,000, And I had given Dominic like serious collectible watches like Audemars, Piaget's. These are very high dollar watches. Then there were a couple thousand each. Today they're like 25,000 each.
Yeah.
And so another month passed. And I'm getting ready. I know I'm going to be going to jail soon. Finally, I said to Cataldo, look, here's my list. So I give him the list. He's okay. I'm going to bring down a buyer. And so I go to the basement of my wife's grandfather's house, and I bring the watches there. And he looks through them all. And he goes off, takes a walk with Cataldo. Cataldo comes back and says, listen, he'll give 90,000. I go, see if he'll give 100. He comes back and says, how about 95? I said, okay, you take 10. I'll take the 85,000. So Cataldo says, good. So the next day, the guy comes with the money, give him all the watches, off he goes. But later that day, Cataldo took me for coffee. He says, you didn't tell the truth. You didn't tell me how many watches you got. What are you talking about? He says, about 600 or 800 watches missing because each one of you guys got 600 of those Rado watches. And those guys got like, say, $10 or $15 a watch. I go, well, they're worth much more. And how do you know that I had 600? He's because Gotti told me. Gotti shared the list with him. And they were trying to, kind of control the price of what they were going to pay for these watches.
They wanted to get
finally, I agreed. I give the stuff to Cataldo, and then a few months goes by. I go to jail. In the meantime, I now have the watches buried.
And where'd you bury him?
Wife's grandfather's basement. Just like 15 boxes of them.
How'd you bury him? Like, what would you put him in?
Oh, I just made a card. I made like a couple of cardboard boxes and stuffed them in there and labeled them with duct tape and stuff. Just left them there. So they're there for like 13 months. I go to jail. I come home. When I come home, the price of gold is not 148 anymore. It's nearing $200 an ounce. Then I go to check the price. I was able to get 5 times what I would have got a year and a half earlier. So, of course, Cataldo knew that I was sitting on those, and he asked me, hey, come on, give me some of those Rado watches. So I gave him a half a dozen of them. I guess today, each one of those watches goes for over $1,000. So figure it out. If I had 600 of them, they'd be worth $600,000 today. Damn. And that's the story of the S&H Pomerantz watch robbery. Of course, Tommy was always sick and jealous that we got off with it. And of course, Gotti was surprised that we managed to pull that robbery off without any difficulty, except for the fact that nobody knew how the FBI found out. And it was 74. So there it was 12 years later, Willie Boy Johnson was revealed as being a confidential informant. So then we figured out, of course I figured out, Foxy was already dead. We figured out how they got the information, and
who told Willie Boy?
That was a hell of a score.
Who told Willie Boy about it, you think, about this heist?
Oh, everybody in the Bergen knew that Foxy made a score. And probably John Gotti. John Gotti was close with Willie Boy. He never figured for a moment. Or maybe Gene Gotti. I don't know. Somebody told Willie Boy. He was there. He knew what was going on. And that's how the FBI found out about it. But they did nothing. They never arrested anybody.
Why do you think so?
Because they didn't want to compromise their prize informant. They kept lots of that stuff secret until the time came, and once the guy is working on a regular basis, they don't reveal who he is.
Hey, thanks for watching this clip. This clip came from one of my interviews I did in the past. Please hit subscribe if you want to get more clips like this. Also, if you want to watch the full interview, I'll put a link in the description. Or you can hit the button on the screen to watch the full interview.